Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the FTD University webinar titled Social Strategy, Paid versus Organic. Today you will learn the pros, cons, and tactics for making smart decisions and getting the results you need with regards to your organic and paid social. Krista, Neher, CEO of Bootcamp Digital, will be leading this informative webinar. She is an international speaker and the author of several books, including the bestseller Social Media Field Guide and Social Marketing for Dummies. Krista has over branding and marketing experience working with companies like Procter & Gamble, GE, Macy's, and Google, and she has been featured in the New York Times, CNN, NBC, CBS, and the Associated Press. Once Krista has finished with her presentation, we will open it up for questions, and she also will be asking questions periodically throughout the webinar. If you have a question, type it in the question box on the upper right side of your screen. So without further ado, I would like to turn things over to Krista to begin the webinar. Krista?
Hello, thank you, Emily, and thank all of you for joining us today. I know there is a lot going on in all of our worlds, so thank you for coming to make this a priority. I have put together some strategies, tips, and tricks that I think will help you to think differently about your social media strategy. Now, I recognize with the sort of time we're in right now and what we are kind of all going through with this, that everyone is in a different place in terms of where they're at, right? Some of you may say, okay, we're open and we've been open the whole time. Some of you are reopening now. Some of you have been open in a limited capacity, and some of you may still be closed. Regardless of where you're at, it's important to keep in mind that all of these strategies can still work for you, whether it's things you're implementing now or things that you're implementing later, especially when we start talking about paid media. Some of you may be thinking, man, I don't know how I'm gonna get through the next X amount of time. And you're telling me to spend money on ads? No, I'm helping you think about them strategically. And look, I'm a business owner as well. My business is very impacted by all of the events. So it doesn't fall on, deaf ears, the challenges that you're probably facing. But what I want to do is set you up for success wherever you are in that journey, to be thinking more strategically about how you invest and how you play in social media, whether it's organic or paid. That's what we're going to cover in our together today. You already heard all about me, so I won't go any more details, but the one thing you probably should know is I'm Canadian. If I sound weird or I say things with a strange accent, it's because I'm actually Canadian. Although I lived in the US for about 12 years. I lived in Cincinnati, Ohio, and I'm actually coming from Amsterdam, which is where I'm based at the moment. So without further ado, let's dive in and talk about what we're here to learn about. So there are 5 things that I want to cover with you today. One is the difference between paid and organic and how to think about each of them. The second thing I'll do is share with you the results by network, and then I'm going to give you pro tips for both organic and paid, and then I'll talk about how they can play together, because that's the most important things is thinking about, okay, how will these two play together? And how do I sort of augment the strategy that makes the most sense for me? So I want to set the stage by talking a little bit about the difference between paid and organic and what they mean. So as we start off thinking about paid is basically where you run an ad on a social network so more people will see your stuff. So these days, every social network has an advertising platform, even TikTok, if you're a little bit ahead of the curve and already making videos there. Every social network has some sort of an advertising platform. And if you sort of step back in time to how this all evolved, when social media started, everyone's idea was, hey, look, build a following, and then you can market to these people forever for free. And so all these brands built their followings mostly on Facebook, before that MySpace, but people started building their presence. And then the social network said, but wait a minute, why are we letting all these brands advertise for free? Also, we have businesses that want to run ads to get in front of more people. So they started running ad platforms. And then over time, what they did was they reduced the visibility of business posts. And Facebook specifically did this. So Facebook, many years ago, said, hey, look, let's reduce the visibility of business posts. And initially they said the reason was they were just showing people the content they most wanted to see. It had nothing to do inherently with the fact that it was a page. Later, Facebook admitted, yeah, look, you're a business. If you want to reach your audience, be prepared to spend money. So essentially, when we think about paid and organic, the base idea here is that on any social network, if you have a following, a certain percentage of your followers will see your content if it's good. And that's what's called organic reach. So if I'm on Instagram and I post a picture and the picture seems to be interesting to people, then some people will see it just because it was good content. But if I want to grow my reach and augment the number of people that can see my content, then I would look to do paid for that as well. And so the way that we think about paid and organic on a social network is basically with an organic strategy, you're able to post content and people who follow you see it. But what we know is that on any social network, not 100% of your fans, followers, or friends will see your posts. So the paid strategy is using ads on those platforms in order to boost your visibility so more people see your stuff. So these are the two strategies that we'll talk about today, and I'm going to talk about them each separately to give you tips for both, and then I'm going to help put it together. And I've already built in some of the most frequently asked questions that I get, like the difference between boosting posts and running ads. So we'll cover all of that kind of stuff. So before we start, I wanted to do a little survey and ask you a few trivia questions. So I'm going to ask you to, I had set this up where you could sort of raise your left hand or right hand, but one, we don't have video here, and two, it mirrors on webcams, so it's all messed up anyways. But what I'll ask you to do, I'm gonna give you a social network, and if you think that there is good organic reach for businesses, raise your hand. And you'll see in the GoToWebinar control panel, you should see the little hand icon, and then I'm going to ask Emily to jump in and let me know how many of you are raising your hands for each of these. Is it like, and Emily, you can just say, oh, not very many, or it looks like about half, so we get a feel. Okay, so the first question is, does Facebook have good organic reach for businesses? So if you think, yes, Facebook has good organic reach for businesses, raise your hand. So if you think that Facebook has good organic resources, raise your hand. And Emily, what does it look like?
We only have a few of you who say yes.
Only a few. Okay, well, most of you are right, or you're not paying attention, but I'll give you credit even if you're not paying attention, and that's why you're right. So if you have not raised your hand, it's because it's right. Most pages do not get good organic reach on Facebook. Studies show that organic reach on Facebook for pages averages certainly under 5%. Most typically, you'll see numbers reported between 3 and 5. For big brands, it's under 1% typically. So Facebook notoriously doesn't have the best organic reach. Now, that doesn't mean that nobody gets good organic reach on Facebook, right? So there are plenty of businesses that still are able to get good organic reach, and I'm going to give you some tips for that. I worked with a park board that was able to regularly get 50–60% organic reach on most of their posts. So it's not to say it could never be done. So some of you that said, yeah, Facebook has good organic reach, it could for you if you have a great strategy. But in general, Facebook's algorithm deprioritizes posts from business pages, so you don't typically see good organic reach for pages there. The next one is Instagram. Raise your hand if you think that Instagram has good organic reach. So if you think Instagram has good organic reach for businesses, raise your hand. Instagram's organic reach. And Emily, I'll ask you to sort of give me an overview of how many people are raising their hands for this one.
A few more than a few.
A few more. Okay. Good. Well, you guys are certainly more right this time. Instagram has pretty good organic reach. Here's the thing about Instagram. So on Instagram, you have pages, or no, sorry, everyone has an account on Instagram. So on Facebook, we have pages and profiles, separate entities for businesses and humans. On Instagram, everyone just has an account or a profile, whatever you'd like to call it. And businesses can designate their account as business accounts, but there is no evidence, they're not required to, but they can. There's no evidence that shows that business accounts get less visibility on Instagram, on Instagram's algorithm. So as the business on Instagram, you have every bit as good a probability of getting organic reach as a user. So we know Instagram is one of the most high engagement platforms out there by far. It's like 20 times more engaging than Facebook. And most posts get a fair amount of organic reach. The same should be true for businesses. So you should be able to see pretty good organic reach. What about Pinterest? Raise your hand if you think that businesses get good organic reach on Pinterest. So raise your hand if you think businesses get good organic reach on Pinterest. And then Emily, you can jump in and tell me what it's looking like.
It is looking like nobody.
It could be because none of you used Pinterest, maybe. So
nobody raised their hand.
Okay, nobody. Wow. Okay, so Pinterest is kind of like a hidden gem of social media in a way, because other than shopping and recipes, it doesn't get a lot of attention from businesses. That being said, on Pinterest, similar to Instagram, right? A business account and a person account, they look the same to the untrained eye. But businesses can designate business accounts. They typically get the same visibility as people accounts there. What I would say you see in Pinterest that's a little unique is that you certainly have more of a virality factor there, where you can have hero content that does well for a really long time, because Pinterest is less news feed driven than the other networks. So if you think of Facebook or Instagram, it's all about the news feed, which means what's happening now, and they cycle through that. Pinterest is a little bit more about sharing content that stays up for a long time. So you can get good organic reach on Pinterest. You certainly can at least get the same reach as an individual, but you need to be sharing sort of interesting content that people like. Okay, and then the last one I have for you is LinkedIn. So raise your hand if you think businesses get good organic reach on LinkedIn. And I recognize a lot of you may not be using it, but I always think every business should be on LinkedIn because it shows up in search results. It's a great way to set sort of the professional tone for your workplace, especially if you ever want to recruit employees or work with corporate groups or anything like that. So raise your hand if you think businesses get good organic reach on LinkedIn. Okay, what does it look like in terms of our answers?
We've got a few.
A few, okay.
Few.
LinkedIn's algorithm, if I can just plug LinkedIn, which I love, I'm not like paid by them, but so LinkedIn's algorithm actually is different than almost every other social network. What LinkedIn actually does in their algorithm is they give more visibility to stuff that doesn't seem to be getting a lot of views. So even if your posts don't typically get a lot of views, you can get this boost on LinkedIn because they want to expose more people to more ideas. Business pages actually on LinkedIn get really high organic reach. So if I think of my pages, our LinkedIn account has maybe, let's say, 2,000 people, and our Facebook page has like 90,000 people. I'm not joking. This is true statistics. On average, if we don't boost or pay to advertise a post, we actually reach more people on LinkedIn than we do on Facebook. And that's with like 2,200 people on Facebook versus or on LinkedIn versus 90,000 people on Facebook. That's how low prioritized Facebook's algorithm can be. Or maybe it speaks to how poor organic reach I have, fair, but how powerful LinkedIn can be. We, on average, doing nothing, reach 10%, and a good post can get easily 50%. So we see good organic reach actually on LinkedIn. So thank you for those of you who played along. That gives you kind of like an idea for the big social networks of what the organic reach looks like. And I skipped over Twitter real quick. I don't know how many of you are still using Twitter. It's kind of one of these networks that's had a lot of ups and downs lately. But on Twitter, a page has the same probability of their content being seen as a person does. And Twitter is actually the least algorithm-driven network. So when it comes to organic reach, if you're on Twitter, you have the same probability of your post being seen as an individual. So there's no difference between business accounts. And so businesses can get great organic reach there. So that kind of gives you an idea of overall the sort of landscape of networks and what their organic reach generally looks like. I would have loved, so when I started planning this presentation, what I wanted to do was try to show you average organic reach numbers by network. But other than Facebook, it's not heavily reported for other networks and certainly not in a comparable way. So if you're wondering, well, what are the specific numbers? Other than Facebook, it's tricky to find generalities. So fortunately, we work with thousands of businesses and have 15 years of experience. We have a pretty good idea of what most businesses see. So now that we kind of have the lay of the land, the next question is, well, what is organic reach? So I mentioned at the beginning that organic reach are the people who see your posts just because you put it up there. So I go on Facebook, I create a post, and some people see my post. Generally, it's going to be the people who follow me. The way organic reach works is that every social network runs off of some sort of algorithm. So when Facebook first launched, the way Facebook would decide what content you saw was just the most recent stuff based on who your friends were. And back in the early days of Facebook, that worked just fine because most people had maybe 100 friends and they were all posting a couple times a week, maybe. Now, an average person can be exposed to over 2,000 updates a day on Facebook and many in all sorts of other networks as well. And so all of these networks have employed algorithms that are basically used to figure out what content goes to the top of your newsfeed. Because just because content was newer doesn't necessarily mean it's more relevant to you. And that's why you see on Facebook, for example, if you have 100 friends, there's maybe 10 of them that you see a lot of, and maybe 30 of them you see periodically, but the vast majority of your friends, you hardly ever even see their posts. And that's Facebook's algorithm at work. Every social network works off of an algorithm. The good news is the algorithms are pretty similar in terms of what they look for to decide what content sort of moves toward the top. And so that's what I'm going to talk to you about. So even though I may gravitate toward using Facebook as an example because it's the largest social network, it's the same logic that applies to all of the networks because every single social network is algorithm driven. So the formula for organic reach is basically the organic reach is typically expressed as a percentage. So it could be a number. So I could say, well, I reached 100 people with this post. Generally, you express organic reach as a percentage. So usually you're talking about the percent of the people who either like or the percent of people who saw your post out of all of the people that have liked or followed your page. So if I have 100 people who've liked my page and 2 of them saw my post, I would have 2% organic reach. So your organic reach is, again, it's the percentage of your audience that naturally sees your content. And this is where, when you think of social media strategy, most base social media strategy focuses on this organic reach. And the reason for that is that you can have your content and your brand seen by people for free without paying money on ads. So what goes into these algorithms? This is the Facebook EdgeRank algorithm, which is probably the most famous. And what's funny about it is you see they've made it look like this complicated formula just to this is why social media people can keep jobs, because we take something really easy, but we put it in a mathematical formula to intimidate people. So it seems complicated. It's actually really, really simple. So even though I'm talking about Facebook EdgeRank, the same general factors are true for every social network. So Instagram, Pinterest, all of them look for the same basic things. And there's usually 3 things that they look at. The first is called affinity. The idea of affinity is your relationship to the person or page that made the post. So I mentioned how on Facebook you see a whole bunch of people a lot and other people you never ever see their stuff. That's the affinity part of the algorithm at work. The algorithm will look at the entity making the post and it will show the posts to the people that are most interested. So for example, if I think of my own page and let's say I'm reaching 100 people, probably the first, X number are my employees, because in theory, they have huge affinity. They're always interested in liking the stuff from our page. So Facebook will show them more stuff from our page. So affinity is basically how interested you generally are in the content or in the page. So even if I don't like a post, for example, if I go to your page a lot, that would signal to Facebook that I'm interested. If you think about this with friends that you see in the newsfeed, there's plenty of friends that I have where I'm like, nope, I'm not liking anything. I'm more a silent stalker type. And even just by pausing on their content, or maybe I go and look at their page periodically, all of those things are signaling affinity to Facebook that says, oh, Krista's interested in this page or person. So affinity is your relationship to the page or person that made the post. The next one is weight. The weight is basically the post itself. So do people seem interested in this content? And so this is where oftentimes, if you think of YouTube, people talk about this a lot, but it's true everywhere. Getting early traction on a post helps the algorithm to think more people will like it, right? So if I create a post right away and Facebook shows it to 10 people and half of them have liked that post, that's going to impact that W, the weight. Facebook's like, oh man, people really like this. But the weight could be things like interactions. Weight can also be determined by the type of content. So by default, Facebook feels that more people like video content. So video content gets more weight over links, for example. It could be the end site that you're sharing. So maybe you've shared 10 things from this website and everyone seems to find it boring. That could impact it. So it's a variety of factors about the post itself. But what Facebook looks at secondly is that actual post and how good is that post. And then the last one is decay, which is time oriented. So how long ago did the post come up? And the reason decay is important is because the algorithm naturally favors content that is newer in a way. So not newer like right this second, otherwise the weight wouldn't matter and it would just be chronological. But content that's posted more recently is considered better in general. So what does this algorithm mean to you? There are a few things that you should take away. And again, even if you're not on Facebook, if you use Instagram, it's all the same ideas because Instagram is owned by Facebook. So all of the networks have the same ideas here. But basically, what you want to think about here is one, when you look at affinity, what this means is that if you post 5 boring things and then 1 good thing, those 5 boring things impacted the visibility of that 1 good thing. Because when you post 5 boring things, the algorithm starts to think, oh, people don't have strong affinity with this page. People aren't that interested in it. So what this tells you is that every post counts. And drawing people back to your page matters as well. Now, it doesn't, there used to be maybe 7 years ago on Facebook, it was really popular for people to try to get likes because they thought it gains the algorithm. The algorithm is much more complex now. They know if you pause to look at content, and that's a signal that you've liked something even without clicking that like button. So when I say liked, it doesn't always have to mean clicking the button in this context. But the affinity basically is going to be the people who said, wow, this is good content that this page posts stuff that I'm generally interested in. So what you may find also on your social profiles is you have the same group of people that are constantly liking and commenting. And it's because they have high affinities, so they have a better probability of seeing your stuff to begin with. So the implication for you of the affinity part of the algorithm is to make sure that all of your posts are good, because it's kind of like a momentum-driven algorithm in that respect. The second one, weight, always post great stuff that people are actually interested in. It's not just like, so the algorithm, again, people used to really game the algorithm by talking about engagements, and everyone wanted to get engagements. And I generally am not big on engagements as a metric because most studies show that engagements don't really correlate well to business and brand metrics. So you could have a post that a ton of people liked. Doesn't mean they like your brand more. Doesn't mean they're more likely to buy from you. It doesn't mean they're more likely to click to go to your website. It just means that these people like to click like on Facebook, right? I think of, no offense, like she couldn't be watching because she's not in the FTD network, but like my grandma, right? My grandma likes literally everything that everyone in her newsfeed posts, I think. And so that's not really signaling specifically anything to Facebook. So it's not just about likes, it's about a variety of indicators about the content to say, wow, this is a good piece of content. And the last one is time decay. What this basically means is you're generally better off if you post when people are awake and online. So there are some strategies. I just read an article last week where like a well-known, pretty legitimate internet marketer had said, post when your competitors are not online. Yeah, but then the problem is if, let's say I post at 2 in the morning, it's not an inbox, right? It's not email where I just see stuff in the order it came in. If you post when your audience is not online, you have a negative impact from this time decay factor, right? Because now already, 6 hours have passed. So it's not that recent, and it can impact your weight because in the first 6 hours, nobody engaged with it and no one seemed interested in it. So all of these three things sort of work together. In terms of time of day, because I know that's one of the most popular questions is what's the best time of day to post on every social network? I can send you, we have a really great chart for social networks that lists every single social network and the best time of day, the best type of content. It's like a cheat sheet for social media best practices. So it's posted on our blog. If you want that, you can send me an email to krista@bootcampdigital.com and I can send you this little cheat sheet if you want to see the best time of day. But the truth of the matter is anytime people are awake, they're on social media these days. So I would just kind of stick to that as your general principle of success in terms of time decay. So that's algorithm and breaking it down. Now I want to give you some specific pro tips for organic. So here's the truth about organic reach. I feel like there's two sort of very opposite trains of thought here. Some people say we don't do paid on Facebook, we only use it for organic. Other people say, who cares about organic? It's a waste of time. We're only going to do paid. The truth is, if you read any articles, somebody will always tell you one of those two is better. The truth is, as always in this world, somewhere in the middle. The truth is, what works best is organic and paid in conjunction. When it comes to organic, though, you can go out, if you do a Google search, organic reach on Facebook, organic reach on Instagram even, you'll find tons of articles that say organic reach is dead. Don't waste your time on this. This is terrible headline writing. Here's the truth of the matter. I've worked with plenty of businesses that are able to consistently get great organic reach. They reach 20, 30, 40, even 50% of their audience on a regular basis organically, even on Facebook. But they work really hard for it. Every single thing they post is really, really valuable and interesting to the target audience. So the thing to keep in mind if you're focused purely on organic is you're going to have to really work hard to create excellent content. This is why we generally, and you'll see this at the end, recommend you consider both together. And again, you may not be in a position right now where you want to go and spend some money on Facebook. I get it, times are tough. But as you start to get back to normal in your marketing and advertising efforts, that might be when you start to more experiment with this strategy. So let me give you, I think I have 7 pro tips on how to create absolutely great content on Facebook. The key to success here, so, people always want hacks and tricks, and I get it. But when it comes to great content, not good content, but great content, there's no magic formula. But what you really want to do is start to figure out what is it that people really like and are interested in that I can post. And that's going to get you sort of that first step in the algorithm. So it's important to keep in mind that Facebook's newsfeed is really competitive. Instagram's newsfeed, very competitive. Every social network is really competitive. And if you want to be seen, your content has to stand out, not against your competitors. it has to stand out against the stuff I'm actually there to look at, right? YouTube videos, political posts, just kidding, no one wants those, but you're competing against them. All these things in my newsfeed, that's what you're competing against, baby pictures, birth announcements. So you need to make sure that you have really good content that stands out. And one of the things that I would suggest is, 5 years ago, even talking about social media, we would talk a lot about content calendars and how often to post. And there still are some general guidelines, but what we talk about now is content over calendars, meaning great content is more important than sticking to a calendar, because if you post stuff that doesn't resonate, it impacts all your future posts. And so definitely think about, how do I create something that really hits a nerve? And part of this is having an idea behind your posts. So really making sure there's something interesting there. So not just, hey, here's a bunch of flowers, but how do you make it funny? How do you make it interesting? How do you make it emotional? How do you make it uplifting? Savings, money, incentives works. Is it inspirational? How do you get someone to say, wow? And when it comes to great content, usually we know it when we see it, but we need to start thinking about what we can do to make really great content to stand out and get more attention. The second thing is what we call optimization. These are like, if you want sort of tips and tricks, the tricks type stuff, this is kind of the trick type stuff that can get you more visibility. So one, use hashtags. And again, I have this social media cheat sheet that goes through every network and the right amount to use, but every network you can use some hashtags. They're less relevant on Facebook, but you still can use them there. The second thing is at or mention other people or pages. So by tagging other pages, then their audience can give you some visibility, and they'll also get notified and probably check it out. The third thing that you can do to optimize your chance of succeeding in the algorithm is to get early traction. So if you have employees, what I would do is like, family, friends, employees, people who are willing to help you out a little bit, ask them to turn on their notifications for your page. So within a Facebook page, you can turn on notifications to say, I want to know every time something happens here. And so on Facebook, you can do that. On Instagram, it would be algorithm driven a little bit, as well as on Twitter or somewhere else. But basically what you want to do is get your employees or your close family and friends to see the post first and ideally like them, so that they're sending early signals in the algorithm that this content is interesting to people. So early traction, ideally with family, friends, yourself, things like that. And then the last tip in terms of sort of tactical optimization stuff is to create promotional groups. And these could be formal or informal. Back in my early days of social media marketing in maybe 2008, there was this restaurant. And I was so impressed by the way they did marketing on Twitter, because what they would do is, so they, at the time, they were just a stand in like an open air market. They now have, it's a multi-location restaurant. But at the time, they were just a stand. And I was in Cincinnati. They were in a place called Findlay Market. And what I was always impressed by was they weren't like, come and get our waffles, come and get our waffles. Ooh, look, more waffles, right? They would say, oh my gosh, we just went across the street and had the best coffee ever from so-and-so. Or like, our favorite things at the market are this place, that place, and the other. Because what they realized was that it's not a fixed pie, right? It's, people don't go there to only buy one thing. And now that they have stores, they'll talk about, or a physical restaurant, they'll say like, hey, here are the 3 best bars to get a nightcap after a good meal, or here's where you can catch live music if you want to plan a date night. And what they do is they constantly build community. They do it very organically, but you could do this organically or on purpose, where basically you look at other local businesses. It could be businesses you partner with, employees, clients, where you kind of mention them, talk about them. Again, it could be informal or it could be formal, where you say, hey, let's all make an effort to promote and lift each other up, because every business is struggling with those same things. So these, when they're overly formalized, they're often known as promotion pods, which can have a negative sort of implication to it. But if you do it with other businesses with similar audiences in a natural way, This is a great way to get you a boost in the algorithm, and also for you and other businesses to expose each other to a similar audience. So look for promotion groups. Again, you can do this informally or formally as a way to grow your exposure within your community. The next tip, I said at the beginning, create great content, and maybe that was vague, right? Because we could spend days talking about what makes great content. But one of the things is how interesting it is. And interestingness is a bit of a tricky thing to say, here's how to make something interesting, because what does make something interesting? It can be a lot of different things, right? But what I always suggest is to look for interesting things going on around you, and then think about how can I adapt that to what I'm doing. So a number of years ago, I was working with an ad agency, and they were doing marketing. It was for a restaurant, and they were like, yeah, we feel like we're missing the mark. And I said, yeah, like, I don't mean to sound rude, but it's all super boring. Everything you post, I can't put my finger on it, but it's so boring. And they were like, yeah, that's probably true, but not helpful. Yeah, I don't know how to say don't be boring, and I can't exactly explain why you're boring. So then I said, okay, well, let's do one post at a time. So we looked at this post, and it's a stock photo of 2 wine glasses clinking together. And the text is like, it's half price wine night. Grab your girlfriends and come down to the name of our place to get some wine. Half price tonight, girls. And it's like, yeah, it's not really saying anything. Wine is something people are passionate about. They're excited about it. It can be fun, it can be interesting. There's wine humor, there's tasting notes, there's just like this visceral love of wine that some people have. And so all of those things can work. It's just figuring out what is the interestingness around the topic, right? And when I work with brands, I struggle with this a little. I'm not naturally the most creative person, I don't think, but I always say go to Pinterest and look around on Pinterest, because what you'll see is, one, visually the stuff there all looks beautiful and is highly attractive. Two, what you see when you do a search on Pinterest is underneath it has these categories, and you can look at those categories to get ideas for other stuff to post. So take a look on Pinterest, because the reason I always look at Pinterest for inspiration, I also like Instagram, but the reason Pinterest is a good place for inspiration is because 80% of the content on Pinterest is repins, which means people are just resharing content there. So it's viral in the sense that it's showing you the stuff that other people thought was good enough to share. So that's bingo, perfect, exactly where you want to be in terms of interestingness. What is something somebody else would want to share, would want to talk about? And so you can go there and explore, okay, what does it look like visually? What are some topics? What are some ideas? And that will help you to also maybe break out of, oftentimes with content, we get stuck in a rut and a single type of content that feels natural to us. This can help you break that mold and come up with refreshing new ideas. The third thing that really matters is eye-catching visuals. What is something that's going to pop out and grab someone's attention? If you look at a post on Facebook even, the number one thing that people look at in a Facebook post is the visual. Then they look, I think number 2 is they look at the text, number 3 is the likes, number 4 is the person posting, something like that. But the first thing is always the visual. So you need to have outstanding visuals in order to capture attention and get people interested. The good news is you don't need to hire someone, you don't need a professional photographer. You need some creativity, and you may need some trial and error. But the thing about good visuals is we know them when we see them. And sometimes I think, you might just feel like, oh, well, I took a picture, good enough. Look at what great pictures look like. What are some of the elements, and try to spend some time replicating them. If you're not at 100% capacity, this is also a great time to do this. So to prove this point, I went on Instagram and I think I searched #florists. So you can see the first screenshot that I took is sort of the first 9 photos, and then the second 9. One screenshot is the most popular images with the #florist, and the other screenshot is the most recent ones with the hashtag florist. So if you just want to in the, oh, well, we'll do a raise your hand since we've done that. So if you think that this first one is the most popular one, raise your hand. So in the GoToWebinar control panel, if you think that this first group of 9 images is the most popular florist images, raise your hand. And then Emily, I'll ask you, do we have any hands up?
Right now, we have no hands up.
Good, you guys are all smart because I think it's obvious. So it also proves my point, right? Because I'm not a creative professional, right? But I feel like, look, I look at these first 9 pictures, none of these are terrible. Like these all could be on any respectable business's Instagram page. But the next 9 really have that wow factor, right? It's like that close up of the eye. And you know, again, I'm not a creative person, but I've done enough creative work on social media. I could give you a whole 3-hour course on, you know, photos that capture attention. But what you'll see is that it's pretty obvious. We know what it is when we look at it. It's like if I were to go to a stock photo site and say, come back with interesting photos, most people would choose similar things as being interesting, right? And so what we see here is that you can tell right away what a great photo is, right? So you might be saying, oh, I'm not a great photographer. You know, you might have all these things running around in your head, but the truth is we all know a great photo when we see one. And so again, the most recent ones, none of them are terrible, but certainly these ones are generally much better. So what I would think about a little bit is to look at some of these best photos. So you can just go on Instagram and search florists, flowers. Flowers is going to be really broad, but start looking at this stuff and you'll start to see what great photos look like. And so you can start to kind of up your game there. The next tip I have to grow your organic reach is what I call rework your greatest hits. So look at your analytics. What are your posts that are doing well? And then reshare those. You could either reshare them right away, so you could re-comment on them and that can give them a new boost, but you could repost the exact same thing. You could take a different angle on it. You could try another one that's similar. But what you want to do here is look at your best performing content and make more stuff like that. A lot of the times in our own narrative, we're like, oh, but I just posted that last month. Okay, but guess what? Only, especially if your goal is organic reach, only a small percentage of your fans are seeing things. You know, our brains, it's like water running through, right? I bet you don't remember a post you saw a month ago from any pages, even if you really like them and follow them. It's just not how it goes. So let go of some of the feel that you may have that everything needs to be new or different. And you can look for stuff that's done well and either do something similar or post the same thing after enough time has passed. The next tip I have is experiment and try new things. If you want to capture more attention, this is the best time to take some risk. And I know it doesn't feel that way maybe, but the thing is you have less to lose right now. So it's a good opportunity to try some new things to see what works. Even if you're limited to like minimal pickup in your store right now, try a contest if you haven't done one before. You know, like it's not taking away all these people coming into your location right now. It's a way you can test something to see if it's going to work with your audience, for your brand, etc. So I would step back and use this as a time to test things. And I think this is true more broadly than just for organic. I will say with my own business, we tried something. It's an idea. I'm not going to tell you what it is, but there's an idea people have floated past me many times and I'm always like, no. It's too risky, blah, blah, blah. It's along the line of heavily discounting. So if you're like Groupons, no, we never do those, right? It would be similar to that, but in our industry. And so it was something we never would do because it's too risky. But you know, when this hit and we lost a lot of our sales, yeah, the risk is way lower. So we tried something new and you know what? I'm like, man, if we'd have done this a year ago. So try new things, contests, questions, even coupons and deals if you don't normally do that, to see what works. And then the last tip I have for you for organic is to hack the algorithm. And what I mean by this is that within each network, there are some elements that get great reach. So on Facebook, stories, even for business pages, get really good reach. The reason for this is because not a lot of people are posting stories, so it's not as algorithm driven as the newsfeed is, and it's less busy. So it's a great time to try stories. Videos get an automatic boost in the algorithm. Live events can get into the notifications of your fans. So those are great opportunities. And then groups are great ways to get visibility as well, because they tend to rank higher in the algorithm. On Instagram, you can try Instagram stories if you want to get more visibility than just through the regular algorithm. And Instagram TV could be something to consider as well. Instagram TV lets you post longer format videos. On LinkedIn, LinkedIn Live, again, it gets priority and notifications. They've just launched polls, so that could be something to try. And if you have a page, it's been a while now that they've launched it, maybe 6 months ago, but you can actually invite your personal connections to like your page. And we've been able to like triple our page growth just from this one strategy. So look for these little windows where you can sort of hack the algorithm, whether it's a type of content or a format that's not so heavily used yet, where you can kind of break through. I want to quickly share with you a few paid tips. The first one, and this is an FAQ that I get a lot, is should I boost every single post? And the answer to this is, well, it depends, not necessarily. So here's the thing. This is how I think when it comes to Facebook content, is a single post. How much of your time do you take thinking about it, getting the picture and posting it? Let's say it's 30 minutes. And what is my time worth? Well, that really depends, but let's pretend my time is only worth $10 an hour. It takes me 30 minutes. So I invested $5 to make the post itself. If I invest just $5 in boosting that post so more people can see it, I can probably reach thousands of people. So if I spend my $5 of my time making a post, organically, let's say I only get 100 people seeing it. So I spent $5 for 100 people to see it. If I add in another $5 of paid, I could have 3,000 people seeing it. And what you can see is that for very small financial investments, you can actually get your posts in front of a lot of people. So you certainly don't have to boost every post, but it can be a good way to just get your content in front of people, even if you only post it to people who've liked your page. And my logic on this too is like, if a post is good enough to just post and to take your time to write it, it should be worth paying some money for people to see it, or else what are you doing? Right? Like on my personal page, yeah, I post random stuff. It's not worth it. I would never pay for someone to see it. On my business page, if I post something and I'm like, nope, not worth $5 for people to see it, it's not a very good post, that I maybe want to rethink that. So you can look at a strategy where you boost all of your organic posts. And some of you may be wondering, this is another big FAQ we get, the difference between boosting and an ad. A boost of a post is where you click sponsor or boost directly in the post. And it's kind of just a fast way to create an ad. So a boost or a sponsored post is an ad. When you boost, you have fewer options in terms of customizing the ad. When you run the ad, you can fully customize everything. So if you start at the beginning and create an ad, you can deliberately create the exact type of ad you want. When you boost a post, you have more limited options because it's just going to take that one post and put it in front of more people. So when it comes to launching a successful paid strategy, and I'm just kind of scratching the surface a little because I'm going to talk about this for like 1 minute. And in reality, I do a whole one-day class on Facebook ads for Facebook. So I should disclose Facebook is a client. We do teach their ads on their behalf. But Facebook's, when you're looking at paid, whether it's Facebook or anything else, and I know I say Facebook a lot, but it's the biggest, and Instagram ads also run off Facebook. So it's all the same thing. But when you're running an ad, what you really want to do is start, number one, with your objective. What do you want to achieve? And this will be the first question you have to answer. Is it a direct call to action? Are you trying to get someone to buy now? Are you just trying to build awareness? Do you want to generate leads that you can convert later? So the first thing is really knowing what you want to achieve. And here you want to make sure you're really deliberate in your strategy, because that's one of the things we often see is that we're like, well, we just boost it. So the thing about boosting posts is it's not necessarily a bad idea, but if you just randomly are boosting all your posts, you're probably not going to get a lot of traction. if you approach your ads by saying, okay, what do I want from this one ad? Do I want to reach people? Do I want to get them to watch a whole video? Do I want to get them to come to my physical location? All of those are objectives you can choose from, and the ad algorithm will optimize to deliver that. So start with your objective. Next, determine your target audience. Who is it that you want to reach as specifically as possible? Then come up with the content that's great for them, and then you can optimize over time as the algorithm works out. So make sure if you're thinking about your paid strategy that you're looking at these 4 elements, because they're really going to be vital to your success in running a successful Facebook ad. So as we put these things together, and as you can imagine, I'm about to wrap up. So if you have any questions, please type them in now so we can dive right in as soon as we're done. So type in any questions that you have now, because I'm going to sort of wrap up with this idea and then we'll do a few questions. But how do we put paid and organic together? Well, I think I've already covered this a lot, but they really work well together. And what you want to ask yourself is, in most cases, the creative really is the big investment. And if it's strategic, so this also stems from strategy. If you have a good strategy that's well thought out, you know what you're doing and why, spending a little bit of money to get more visibility is usually it's a no-brainer. And so that's why we say normally we see paid and organic working well together, because naturally not a lot of people see your content, and for a small amount of money you can get it in front of more people. The other thing to think about is that less is now more in social media. So I remember when I started, it was like post at least once a day on Facebook, once a day on Instagram, 4 times a day on Twitter, and a lot of people struggled to keep up with it. The frequency expectations from users have decreased. And if you look at a lot of big brands, they post once a week. I'm not saying you should only post once a week, but what I'm saying is quality matters more than quantity. So if you're struggling with paid and, you know, how much you're spending your time on things, you know, if it was me, I told you it takes 30 minutes, let's say, for me to make a post. My time's only worth $10 an hour even. If I am posting 5 times a week, what I probably would want to do is only post twice a week and take the extra $5, $10, $15 of my time money and put that into a paid strategy. So I make a few posts that are a little better, and then I spend some money so people actually see them, so they have a better probability to grow my business. Because otherwise what a lot of businesses find is they feel like they're spinning their wheels, where they're creating content every day and not a lot of people see it. So less is more. Don't feel like you need to overcompete. And then the last thing that I'll leave you with is #ThinkImpact, which is one of our big slogans here. It's a little tricky because everyone's business is unique and different in terms of what specifically would work for you based on your resources, where you're at in your journey, your marketing goals and objectives. But what you want to do is think about, where can you have the biggest impact, right? And as you look at the balance between organic and paid, one of the challenges with organic is you have to work really, really, really hard to get great content to build and maintain that organic reach. Augmenting with paid is a lower resource investment way to get that big reach without having so much time and energy built into your community management. But think about, for your business, how you can most build impact. So I wanted to just give you 4 steps of 4 things. So I've given you a lot of ideas. Here are 4 things that you can do. 1, start with your strategy. So even though I'm giving you some general ideas, yeah, you know, why not boost a post? It's inexpensive, you reach a lot of people. You can start for literally $1 a day is fine. But start with strategy. What are you doing and why? Because if you know the strategy behind every individual post, so if I know what each individual post is supposed to achieve, then it's much easier for me to feel confident spending money. Oh, this is building top of mind awareness. That's why it's a picture of the outside of the store. Yeah, I know that's important. I have no problem spending $10 to promote that. So start with strategy. The second one is determine what is really your opportunity. What is it that you want to tackle? Then sort of build your plan. Okay, here's what I'm going to try going forward. And then always look at your analytics to know what's working and not working, so you can adjust, measure, and get better every single time. So with that, I think we have a little bit of time for questions. If you do want, I mentioned the social media cheat sheet. you can Google it. It's on our blog, but I don't have the specific URL. So also feel free to send me, my email address is on here. Send me an email if you want the cheat sheet, and I can look it up and send you the link to that as well, because I think it'll be really helpful for you. But with that, let's dive in and see if we had any questions.
We do. So we've got a few questions here. From Krista, he is asking, should I post on Facebook or Instagram, or should I just have it go to both because they're owned by the same company?
Well, so different content sort of performs better on each of them, but you can take a post and put it on both. That's a totally valid strategy. You'll hear different opinions on this, but in general, it's fine, because keep in mind, not everyone sees everything you post everywhere. So what I would suggest though is, what you don't want to do is like half do everything, meaning you create one post that's not really better for either one, and then it goes on both and it does just okay on both, right? That's your worst case scenario, because then you're spending resources. If you think impact, you're spending resources, but you're not really getting that traction anywhere. So what I would suggest is choose your priority channel, build for that, and then it doesn't hurt to cross post it on the other channel, as long as it won't feel way off. So you can definitely post the same content. If you use a scheduling tool, like we always recommend Buffer app, they have a plan. I can't remember what it's called now. It's only like $100 a year. It's called the Awesome Plan or something. It's not on their official plan list. But with Buffer, you can schedule stuff out. And so what we would do is, rather than posting the exact same thing at the same time, we have posted on Instagram on Monday and Facebook on Friday. So if you use a scheduling tool, and you actually could do this also, Facebook has scheduling built in for both Facebook and Instagram. So you could do it there as well, but I would try and break up the timing, because it's only a little bit of extra effort and it can go a long way. But yeah, totally okay to do. Just really think about what's your priority, so you don't end up with something that's not really good for either.
Okay. Jackie's question is, how do I go about creating a story? What should go into the story? And would be grateful for an example. So if you do have examples, maybe anywhere on your blog, because that's pretty in-depth.
You know what? Maybe I'm going to, Emily, ask you a question. Hopefully you know the answer. But all of these webinars that we do are recorded and available to people somewhere, yes?
You're right. Yes, we did one on stories, Instagram.
One on stories.
You did, yes.
Yeah, that's why I know this, because when I needed to get the template, I literally opened a presentation for FTD on Instagram stories.
We'll send you the link, Jackie.
If you really want to dive in, there's stuff on the FTD library on it. But to create stories, you do need to do it. I don't think you can even, I think you can schedule it from Facebook's native desktop scheduler, but stories are really meant to be used on a phone. What I'd recommend, it sounds like you're new to stories, what I would recommend you do is just use them personally first, look at them, make them as well, and you'll get a feel for it real quick, and then expand that to your business, because it is a little specific and it has to be done on your mobile phone. So stories are made on your phone. Facebook will let you post stories from your desktop computer. They look like garbage, so don't do it that way. Always do it from your phone, because it'll get the framing right for all of your posts.
Okay, and then last question, what would you say is a good percentage for organic reach that would be considered good to excellent?
One that is going up. That's always the right answer, right? One that is improving. So here's the thing, right? The average for businesses is somewhere between 1% and 3%, super low. I've worked with businesses that are up to 50. One business I worked with, they started at 20, but we went up to 40. I say they did. I told them what to do. I did a workshop, but they did all the work, right? So the thing is, like, if I had told them, well, 5% is good, which 5% would be good, they maybe would say, well, we're at 20, fine. So I would always say one that is improving. You can't get average organic reach for most social networks. Facebook is well known. I struggle to find accurate statistics for other ones. So my suggestion would be, from a benchmarking standpoint, because that's what you're trying to do, I would just benchmark against yourself. And then what we always recommend is set a goal. So what a lot of people will do is they'll just say, here's what was good and here's what was bad. Set a goal, right? If I'm going to spend 20 minutes on a post, how many people should see it for that to be worth my time? So it could be a goal based on return on investment. It could be a goal based on, well, we have 500 people who see our stuff now, we want to get to 600. But set a goal, and then you can look at your posts and objectively say, this didn't perform well or this did perform well. And it drives much more accountability versus just this best versus worst mindset, because they could all be a waste of your time. And you need to reevaluate what you're doing a little. So that's how I would kind of attack it. I know I'm not really directly answering your question, but there isn't a number I can give you. I would just always set a goal of doing better than where you're doing now.
Okay, great. Well, it looks like we are out of questions for today. And so I want to thank all of you for attending today's webinar. If you would like to view it again, as Krista actually referenced, we do have our library of webinars on demand, including one on Instagram stories. You can actually find that on ftdi.com under our education tab or within the FTD Mercury Network YouTube channel. We will be sending a brief survey to get your feedback on today's webinar. Stay tuned to our Mercury Network Facebook page and ftdi.com for details about our upcoming webinars. Thank you again, Krista, for sharing the pros and cons and tactics of organic and paid social. And this concludes today's webinar. Thank you, everyone.